crime. Specifically, and this is kind of the micro view, but there's a macro story behind it, a larger story behind it, but specifically carjacking. Carjacking, there was a story here in Portland that went kind of viral in the local newspaper about how people would be acting like they're in distress on a road. You know, like somebody would be stopped at a stop sign and somebody would run up and go, help me, help me. And you'd roll down the window and they'd reach in and open your door, or they'd pull your door open and grab you and take your car and drive off. And the lesson was, don't stop when somebody says, help me. But it's now reached the point, and not just in Portland, but all over the country, where we've got these carjackings that are even being done at gunpoint. And I mean, the number of carjackings has quadrupled in New York City in the last 4 years, nearly quadrupled in Philadelphia. It's up everywhere in the country. And it seems to be mostly being driven by teenagers. Now, there are some folks, this CNN article about it by Peter Nikias and by a couple of writers at CNN anyway, is arguing that this is because pandemic soft on crime policies, and I put those in quotes, are causing, in other words, the desire during the pandemic not to keep people locked up in jails, which are like incubators and, spreaders for disease, have caused offenders to get out while they're waiting for their court dates and reoffend. Maybe. There are other folks who are suggesting, no, this is like inflation. This is just transient. This is, kids are not in school and people are not at work because of COVID, and when COVID goes away, this will stop. I don't know. I mean, one of my kids has had 3 different vehicles stolen. None of them, thank God, were carjacked. They were all just stolen, but still, it's like this, shall we say, crime wave in America is becoming extremely problematic. Bill Clinton responded to this by putting 100,000 cops on the street. But, there was also all that talk about super predators and a lot of laws that ended up disproportionately harming mostly black people and also Hispanics, people of color. Stop and frisk, this was Giuliani's big solution. No, it didn't seem to make any difference, but hey, it sounded good for PR. Carjackings are up like 400% in Chicago and Philadelphia and in many other cities. Crime is up. Somebody tried to break into our house a couple of months ago. I mean, this is, and did, a couple of houses down from us, actually broke in, and our neighbor was in the shower, came out of the shower to discover somebody riffling through their house. People are freaked out about it. Now, there is a really important reason why this is so, it's obviously important, but so politically potent. Abraham Maslow, back in the day, the famous psychologist, came up with a hierarchy of human needs. It's often characterized as a pyramid. Maslow hated the pyramid idea, but that's usually how we see it. And at the foundation of it are the basic needs. The need to breathe and eat and regulate your body temperature, just homeostatic needs. The next step up from that are safety needs. Above the safety needs, you find the social needs. Above the social needs, you find the intellectual needs. Above the intellectual needs, you find things like love and companionship. At a more individual level, then at the very top, he had self-actualization or spiritual insight or something like that. But the bottom line is that safety is at the bottom of this pyramid, or near the bottom of this pyramid. So, in other words, if you're walking across a street and suddenly the light changes and you've got cars whizzing all around you, you are not thinking about who you're going to vote for in the next election. You're not thinking about what you're going to watch on TV that night. You're not thinking about your relationship with your best friend or with your partner. You're not thinking about, the state of the economy. You're thinking about, I got to get safe now. It drives out all other thought. Because on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, wherever you are stuck, everything above that point vanishes. This is how important safety is, and why it's such a potent political weapon that I guarantee you Republicans are going to be using against Democrats in the coming election. They're going to be saying, Democrat-run cities are not safe. Look at all this crime. And there will be some truth to the fact that crime is up. Now, we can talk about oh yeah, you know, the pandemic was a disruptive event. The economy has become more unbalanced. You know, the schools were out for a year. There's a whole bunch of things that we can point to say, well, that's actually what's going on. But this is going to get visceral. And frankly, I think if the Democrats don't get ahead of this by coming up with specific strategies to deal with this, and by the way, they're not mysteries. Community policing, for example, getting cops out of cars and onto the streets, walking around, same cops, same neighborhood on a regular basis, cops who by and large look like the neighborhood. Community policing. It was arguably the one thing that Bill Clinton did for crime that not only was politically advantageous, putting 100,000 cops on the street, but had a positive impact. Now, putting the wrong cops on the streets or putting poorly trained cops on the streets will backfire badly. Which brings you to number two, which is, you know, let's upgrade the profession of policing to a profession. And some of that is going to involve taking on the police unions. Now, I'm a big fan of unions, but most of these police unions are not really like unions. They're you know, protection rackets for bad cops in many cases. So, you know, for example, better training, community policing, getting more police out there, revisiting how we punish. It's not quite the right word because, again, I am haunted by this movie. You know, Michael Moore's movie, Who to Invade Next, or Where to Invade Next. That was it, Where to Invade Next. Where, you know, he goes around the world and he looks at all these different, you know, kind of government systems and says, maybe we could borrow this, maybe we could borrow this. And he goes to Norway and looks at their prison system. And it's like, oh my God, they're actually focusing on rehabilitation. Their assumption is that all these people are going to end up back in society, or the vast majority of them. And so we're not going to damage them further. We're going to keep them from society, and we're going to train them, teach them, rehabilitate them, give them skills, and then bring them back into society. It's a very different thing from the United States, where you know, our prison system is based on, in large part, the old plantation system where somebody gets out of line and you throw them in the hole. So I think that there's a lot that can be done and a lot that must be done, but Democrats need to get ahead of this.